First and foremost, congratulations.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, at least we have one.
Yes. Welcome to the best part of your life.
Yes.
Okay.
So so that transition for you, was
Yeah.
it planned on your terms? What happened? Take us back
So I was on radio for a total of 10 years combined. I got in when I was 20, I left when I was 30. So I was not the same person towards the end. And I didn't like my job towards the end, even though it was like breakfast show, you're doing, you're doing well.
there. Top of your game.
And you're around music and celebrities. On the outside looking in, it's so glamorous.
Yes.
But it was just not fulfilling. It was not challenging. I was probably the most miserable in the last 4 years. I don't know how I made it through.
Okay.
And so for 4 years, I'd wanted to quit. But the first year I wanted to quit, I was moved to the breakfast show. So I was like, okay, this still helps.
Yes.
I can knock off my goals faster, and then I get out of here. So you know how in your resignation letter you write, it's been great the last 7 years, the last 6 years, or whatever. Mine kept, every year I'd go back and edit it and add one more year. And like everybody around me was like so overhearing how I wanted to leave. But there's fear of failure, there's fear of the unknown.
Yes.
We're so conditioned to, you have to have a job. It's a huge part of success, you know. Then you're at this job that has so much visibility. So people think you're mad if you're saying that you don't like your job.
Yeah.
But in December, so 2018, and I'm a big believer in therapy. And I remember my therapist saying, name this fear. Like, what is the fear? You're saying fear of failure. Okay, so what is failure? I'm like, hey, failure is if my finances are depleted and I have to be dependent. So she's like, cool. So now what's the plan, right? So now you actually start building. You're like, okay, this is what I'm going to do with my money. Yeah. So 2018, I was just like, we're saving every single penny that comes in. And so one of the jobs that I was fortunate enough to get took me to Joburg. And, after the week of work, we ended with going for a concert, which was Global Citizen, where Beyonce performed.
Yep.
And I remember being in that stadium. First and foremost, if you can't tell, I am a fan.
Yeah.
But there's something about watching her do this powerful thing, and just, it was so powerful. And we were there for like a women-centered.
Was Victoria Rubadiri there?
Victoria was there. I was with Julie Gishuru.
I remember. I'm telling you, I've been stalking
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
So
Hey.
watch your
And then,
pages.
I was actually there with her. Should I remember?
Oh, yes.
You were there.
Mandela 100?
No.
Mandela 100?
Yes. Yeah.
Beyonce, Jay-Z were performing?
Yeah.
I mean,
Where were you? But
Beyonce and Jay-Z were there. How could she see you?
and it was so then
I was there.
stadium so huge.
Yeah, I was there.
I think the stadium was so.
Then I normally wear specs.
Yes.
So
I was next to the VIP actually.
Hey.
Like Jay-Z, Beyonce were like here. And I'm like, oh my God.
But it
this
was
is such a big
powerful,
deal.
wasn't it?
Oprah,
Yes.
Oprah was there.
I don't remember.
Was it
But also, if Beyonce is in the room, I do not remember other people. I'm just like,
Me, I remember watching your pages. So
Yeah.
you were saying how it changed your life.
Yeah, I just was like, this chapter in my life is so, it represents such a small part of my overall life. How am I so scared to make the jump, yet I have this huge life lying ahead of me that could be powerful. I could be able to do powerful things.
Yes.
But because I'm not jumping, because I'm stuck in this chapter too,
Yes.
And so I said, okay, when I come back home, when I get back to work, if on the 27th, I think it was 27th, if all my bosses are at work, it's a sign from the universe that I'm handing in this resignation. Sent and printed it undercover. And when I got to work, all my bosses, media houses in December are normally like ghost towns.
Yeah.
They were all there. I was just like, okay. So I handed
It's a sign.
Yes, I handed in my resignation. I began serving my notice.
They
At the
accepted
time,
it.
yeah, okay, but I never understood that thing of accepting, because I'm like, but see me, I've decided.
I'm going.
No, they can convince you with a counter offer.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Okay,
is it
so
the
there
money?
was a dance.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a dance, which meant I stayed 2 extra months.
Okay.
But I was very smart, and I tell everybody, make sure your contracts protect you.
Yeah.
So my contracts was such that if they didn't honor the new terms that I wanted, I could leave and not serve notice. And so that's how I left on a Friday, and I just went home and I said, I'm out. And I turned off my phone and I slept, the best sleep ever.
Wow.
But when I was handing in the resignation, podcasting was not the plan. I was done with media. I think I was just so broken mentally. I was just like, maybe this place is not for me, actually. Let me go to the NGO world. Let's save the world. And in January, a close friend sent me some link about a podcast. I'd never listened to a podcast.
Yeah.
Imagine, I was already, I'd never listened to a podcast. And I was just like, please, I'm not trying to start buying equipment. My savings need to be untouched for a while.
Yeah.
But I was like, it doesn't hurt to read up.
Yeah.
So I literally Googled how to start a podcast. I think I put for free or something, the Kenyan in me. And one of the articles I came across detailed the microphones that I could use. And that's when I was reading up about USB microphones. I was like, what? Like, I don't need all these things I see in the studio. Okay. And then it had a link to the Amazon page. So you see the price. I was like, oh, I can afford to very easily. Like,
$12,
yeah. And even if I don't even use it, it's not like the end of the world.
Yeah.
And then my cousin was coming from the States that February. So I did the Kenyan thing. Sorry, Kerry. I was like, is there space in your suitcase? Exactly. So she brought me my microphones. I changed our extra room in the house and made it my home studio. And even as I was starting, I was still like, this is going to be a hobby. This NGO thing is really where it's at. And so my fundi for the first time was done as per the deadline. Everything was there, but I was so scared. And I remember I cry a lot. So I had a moment and I cried and I called my friend. I'm just like, what am I doing? I'm leaving my job. When I tell people I'm going to start a podcast, they ask me, what's a podcast? I'm just like, Jesus, so who's going to be listening? And then he asked, he was like, then put that in the episode.
Right.
And so when I hung up, the name came because I did not know what I was doing. And so, but I was legally clueless. So then I was like, but it's okay not to know. It's a huge part of being human is not knowing. And then the name came. The first episode is 8 minutes of just me shaking voice, crying. And your voice is after, okay, I don't know if you guys cry.
This is a lady with 10 years of experience.
I was so scared. It was 8 minutes and I felt that was so long because on radio we talk like 1.5 minutes is a long time.
Yeah.
So 8 minutes, I was like, who is going to listen for 8 minutes?
Yeah.
It's long. But that's where we started. And I think the first 7 episodes were me just sharing where I was at, like being very honest, like I'm starting afresh. I really don't know what I'm doing, guys. This is crazy. Then I started inviting friends. I went to Ethiopia to do some work with the African Union. I met this very interesting guy, and I'll always have a microphone on me. And so I met this interesting guy, and I'm just like, hey, Kolekile, you're very interesting. I have a podcast. So we're going to find a room we record. It's like, great. And then I was like, wait. So Africans can learn about each other, and we can share stories, and we can just, all of us just communally say, this life thing is a bit, but it's for all of us. Yeah. And that's how it became a platform for amplifying African stories. Our mission is 3-pronged now: amplifying African stories, upskilling Africans, so now we have workshops, and then promoting the wellness of our African community. So the content is drenched in wellness. So now we have intentional events to ensure that we're taking our wellness seriously as Africans.
Do you see parallels the way we started? Not like we have history, like long history, but clueless. Maybe you should have called it.
Nobody knows what they're doing, man. We're all just winging it very confidently.
And you know that there's that confidence that comes when you're around a studio, you're familiar with equipment. Now you have your equipment there and you're trying to, do something on your own. Yeah. Your script, no rules. It's scary. And actually our first episode, we were also sort of like uptight. That's what I was
Yeah.
told.
Yeah.
Hey, they don't look uptight kidogo. Jiachilie. Like, still learning. Maka
It'll
no kizungu
come,
mingi.
yeah.
Like, he's in studio. Like, jiachilie,
Yeah.
relax. But I think it's an interesting space. But the question I have for you is, when you're first getting into it, so you have the gear and everything, did you have in mind like, okay, so these are the topics I'll be handling. Okay, so this is what I'm going to be, this is how I'm going to start. Did you have anything scripted, or you just decided, okay, you know what? This is me ranting, or this is me pouring
Yeah.
out my heart. And
Episode 1, no script, no prep, nothing. Like, I was just like, is the microphone on? Unanisikia?
Unajigwa.
Legit, it was that for 8 minutes. And kind of just understanding the process of, okay, so you edit like this, and then this is the hosting place you put it, and this is how people will listen to it and stuff. But then obviously as I went, I reverted. Radio was good because in the sense that it taught me the discipline and the unsexy bits of it. So I definitely do to this date have a prep sheet for, and I do 4 episodes a week. So there's one that goes online like a traditional podcast, and there's 3 episodes that play on Trace Radio in Kenya. And so I have 4 prep sheets basically. Yeah. And it makes things easier. When I turn on the microphone, recording is probably like 30 minutes because now I have everything is prepared. If I need any clips, that's already done.
Yeah.
you have a producer, or you're doing it all by yourself?
So I do have an audio producer when I have advertisers, but I love the process of, there's something very amazing about audio. So I love the process of recording. I love the process of editing. This year I'm onboarding someone to help me record the stories.
Okay.
And I'm only doing that because it's the efficient thing to do. But if I could have my way, I would record each and every story myself, because that process is also so beautiful. Like, you sit across, it's expanding. You sit across people who have different values from you.
Yes.
And it's okay. You both can coexist.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Or you listen to a story and you find bits of yourself in their story. And you're just like, I thought you are so different because you're from,
Yeah.
but we are the same, you know? So I love the process, but now as we expand, it just makes sense and it's more efficient to have someone.
200 plus episodes after, the fear that you had,
Yeah.
are you nervous about, does it manifest or does it ever come back again before you get to the next level? Because you've said you're 3-pronged now in terms of your approach. Do you see it rearing its head?
I think we lie to ourselves, well, maybe it was just me lying to myself, that there is a state of no fear. That state does not exist at all. And I used to tell myself, when the fear goes down, that's when I know it's time to do the thing. And the fear would just never go, right?
Yeah.
But now I understand fear in that it's you don't fight your fears, because your fear comes from your mind trying to like protect you. It's just like, okay, please don't go there to Tachomeka.
Yes.
So you just have to sit down with your fear and be like, imagine we won't. I have bought ABCD, or I'm doing this to minimize. And even if we Chomeka, it's not the end of the world, you know? So I still, with every episode, there's fear. Obviously, on some weeks, it's more than others because life is probably happening.
Yeah.
I have fears when it goes to pitching, but I think I've learned how to. I hope none of my clients watch this, but sometimes you just BS some questions. You're like, I don't, what? It's just like, oh, when I get back to the office, I'll send you. You're just like, I didn't prepare for that.
Yes.
So you do have fears, but it feels right. And you know when you're doing the thing that you're meant to be doing, because it feels right.
Right.
Yeah.
Deno, I mean, and this is me pushing you to tell people what thing you're doing, because he's not leaving the social newsroom.
Yeah.
But he also wants to start a conversation about the Forex world and Forex trading. And as you hear this, I feel like it's therapeutic, and like you should pay her for this session, because she's giving you the journey of what you're going to be doing. But I want us to hear how you're fusing the craft and the platform to your skill, your new skill that people don't really know about. Because I want to get to Adelle Onyango initiative as well and see how it fuses with Legally Clueless. But like, I want you to tell people there's
Well,
exciting stuff happening. I wish I could tell you, but it's not my story.
Well, it's really exciting, but also the feel I am getting from Adelle, which is encouraging actually for me, is podcasting can also be birthed from a place of not just inspiration,
Yes.
but what your heart really feels.
Oh, yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily need to be a topic that you pick from somewhere or a headline from a newspaper. It can just be you just talking about you know, how you view your world, your perspectives and all that. And for me, I've been building a number of things around myself. So people know me, Den Sokari, the investigative journalist and all that. But there is more to life than that. That is what I do, but that's not who I am.
Yes.
I mean, I am very passionate about certain things around my life and with people that I meet, and I love meeting people. I like knowing people. I love hearing their stories, and that's what built me in the mainstream. But now getting into this other part of the world where we're talking about economy. So Forex trading is not just directly Forex trading. So what I discovered is a lot of young people, and especially men, are not taught how to do savings, for example. I learned this later in life. And sometimes I look back and reflect and wish I hadn't done certain things, like going to a bank, getting a loan to buy a car, and you're like 25 just because you have a job. That was a terrible mistake. So I reflect back and I'm thinking, oh, if I had somebody to advise me, I wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't have done this. But it's the whole saving culture, it's the view and perception of money, especially within the Kenyan context, where it's hand to mouth and that sort of thing. And so I meet guys who, from church, you will meet people, somebody wants to get married, hana do ya dowry, hana do ya wedding, hana do ya kwenda rurashio, and you're asking people for money, WhatsApp groups and all that. Well, that is okay. What I later discovered is, in my conversations with a lot of young guys, is, first of all, ukona pesa ya honeymoon, so you want to marry this girl. Where are you taking her? Do you have a budget like for the next 3 months? You guys are okay? Do you have rent for those 3 months? And I realized that a lot of people don't go through these lessons as you're going through counseling. It's all emotional, it's all spiritual, it's all this, but now the practical part of life is you're going to be spending money. You need to work as a man, but you also need to save, not just for yourself, but for your kids and for your children's children. I'm already thinking the inheritance I will leave my children at this stage. So you can't look at the environment and say, kuna kazi, so you can't. No, that's not really it. And the examples that I share in my classes. So what I'm doing is Forex trading. I've been doing this since 2016. And the exciting thing is I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly around Forex trading. There are a lot of scammers out there. So I've traveled, I've interacted with people in investment banks and all this kind. So I'm privileged to have some information that people don't have. And so the question is, so what do I do with all this information? Why don't I share this information with people who will care to listen? And if somebody wants to pay me for it, well, that's all good. But there's also the inspirational part. You have people who are also broken. I've been broken. Like everyone you find in life, they've been broken one way or the other. And there are lessons that I've learned through my brokenness that I would want to share. Like, how did I get out of this? Adelle was earlier talking about, when you're working, you're so caught up with work that you don't realize there are mental illness issues. There are all these mental health issues. And somebody asked me, how do you debrief from the stories that you cover? All of a sudden, I realized during COVID, for the first time in my life, I was actually talking to a psychologist. And I didn't realize that I needed one. And for me, I was like, I'm a man, I'm strong enough. Sasa, hizi ni story gani? So I go sleep, kwa couch, pillow, talking pillows, do what? Then I realized sometimes sharing is really therapeutic. I believe also in therapy. So sharing stories that have inspired me, stories that have changed me, stories that I believe can change somebody else, and the trajectory, that's what I'm really passionate about. And so I'm going to be doing more of this. I'm doing classes. It's exciting. But I'm discovering also, I don't know about Adelle, I'm more busy than I was before.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
thinking, oh, this comes with freedom. I'll wake up at 10. I'm realizing like, wow,
It
it's already
doesn't.
nighttime.
You're
I've
on the
not finished
clock.
this. I don't
Oh
know
my
about you.
goodness. I felt the same. I remember thinking a few months in, I was like, man, I really shortchanged my employer. I was like, goodness, I thought I was working vigorously for you, but
Yeah.
surely I was giving you 10%. Because ouch, yeah. Yeah, so you don't have, it's multitasking on a whole other level. But we're blessed to be in a time where there are programs that can help us run more efficiently. So I'm really thankful for that. Time management, my goodness. I just think of my primary school teacher who used to talk about time management. I'm like, it's like she knew what was coming. But yeah, and it takes away from, but it's a sacrifice. It takes away from social activities, etc. But you're sacrificing so that you can build something that is really powerful and that can branch into even bigger things. So yeah, I think that's a hard bit, but I'm happy it's coming at a time like, well, I'm old enough, I'm chill enough. Like in my 20s, I think I'll just be like, this week I don't feel like recording.
Like YOLO type of thing.
Yeah.
He had said something and you agreed vehemently with it, that there's what you do and there's who you are. And it's not the same thing. But then, and reading up and listening to you sharing about your story, there's who you are, which involves what you have been through, that informs what you do.
Yes.
So we have in the list of accolades, the Adelle Onyango Foundation, initiative. And I mean, this is besides Denoacha Nisome, I had to write it, BBC 100 Women 2017, Facebook Icon of Change 2019, 100 Influential Africans 2019, founder of Legally Clueless Africa, which we've talked about, founder of Adelle Onyango Initiative. Tutafika hapo. Adelle Onyango Initiative. I keep saying foundation, maybe I'm manifesting
One
day.
Where
you are going.
Have the fun day.
That's where it's heading.
Yes. So how you fused it with Legally Clueless, or rather, how you have used what or who you are, what you've been through, to what you do.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I think we go through things, whatever your spiritual belief is. I think this cuts across. There's a purpose for the things that we go through, right? And for me, what I've taken it to be is that it's for me to build something in service of others, and something bigger than myself, and speak to particular issues. So I am a survivor of rape, so that's under sexual violence, and which happened when I was 18. And my late mom, who was not like any typical African mom, immediately, once I told her, which was like a year and a half or so later, started shopping for, we shouldn't use shopping because they're human beings, but we were looking for a therapist. And this was, when I was 20, I'm 34 now. So that was a time that you don't talk about going to see a therapist or whatever. There was a lot of stigma around that. But she understood these issues, and I immediately saw how that helped me. And at the beginning, when I started like creating awareness around sexual violence, it was really born from a place of anger, understandably.
Yes.
And so it was just like, why are you guys not talking about this? I turn on the TV, I don't see it. No. It was just like,
activist type.
Everyone, and with time, I realized I can't save everyone. My very good friend, Dr. Njoki Ngumi, always reminds me that. She's like, you can't. She's amazing. She's like, you can't save everyone. And so I had to really think, what do I want my role in this fight or in this change to be? And I sat on the side of psychosocial interventions. So how do you connect survivors of sexual violence to quality, but free because it needs to be accessible, therapy? And we treat it with the respect that it needs. So it's not just anybody. We built a curriculum, which is built by 3 psychologists and a curriculum developer. And then we made it a group therapy session, because group therapy is really great to develop sisterhood, among survivors, but also to get those who are scared of one-on-one therapy, kind of like to ease them in, like, okay, we're together here, and then maybe in 4 months, now you can go and do one-on-one.
Yeah.
And so that's what we did, and we teamed up with Carolina for Kibera. They're an amazing NGO, and we have run 3 cohorts of the program is called Safe 247, and I built it around the ethos that every human deserves to be safe 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I couldn't find funding, because when you talk about such things, like corporates are just like, ooh. And then when you apply for grants, there's a lot of stereotypes of the type of Africa they want to save. You know, and we didn't fit into that, because it's just like, are you war torn? I'm like, no. Like, I don't think so. Open my curtain, I'm like, no, I think we're good today. And so it was difficult. And then I just said, you know what, we're going to get Kenyans too. I think people are inherently good. That's one thing I've always believed. It's easier for us to be and do good than it is to do bad. So I was like, I'm just going to put it out on my social media and tell people, even just send 100 bobs. And this is how we're going to run this thing. And we've never had funding. We raised through crowdfunding 400,000 Kenya shillings, which went to the 3 cohorts and the toolkits that each survivor gets. And so I think people are good. Right now, we're trying to figure out how do we make it more sustainable. And it's hard. It's very, very difficult. I think before podcasting, I was handing my resignation to go to the NGO world to be like, save the world. Then I found, hey, even here, hey, it's tough. Where do I belong, guys? But it's fulfilling. And I think through it, then my purpose changed. And I really started to expand as an African woman. And then I realized, well, my title is not just a survivor. I'm also like, I like the soft life. I like to enjoy things. And I want to be able to help African women who may not have survived sexual violence. And then it expanded to be like, actually, I want all Africans to know how dope they are, you know? And so over time, my purpose has just been expanding. And so when you step back, you can see parallels between the initiative and Legally Clueless. It's just like we're reaching now more people. Like, oh, we'll still do group therapy this side now. All of you can come.
I totally appreciate that, because, and I'm looking at also parallels with people Chamwada, who's done Daring Abroad.
Oh, yeah.
And that is still shaping and retelling the story, the African story, in a different way, because it's about the positive side. You've seen that video. The typical African.
Oh my God. Dun, dun, dun,
Oh, yeah, I saw that.
Dun, 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 dun.
I have nothing but.
And I love that, because the Legally Clueless podcast, you've done a tour.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I can't wait for you guys to go on tour. I can't even be the driver, please, because I love that experience. I always wanted to go on tour. When I was resigning and doing the dance with my former CEO, who I'm very grateful to, PQ, he taught me a lot. I remember telling him, I hate being in this box. Like, life is happening outside there. And then me, I'm just in this box. Like, and I'm lying that I know that I'm there, but I'm not there. So I always wanted to be on tour. And I used to say, I want to be like a musician. You know, those gigging musicians who they're on tour for a long part of the year. You know what I mean? And so I was like, I want to be like that. I want to be on the road, maybe even not have a house, because I'm just on the go. And I decided to write it out. There was an opportunity to apply for a grant from Africa No Filter. And I was like, Connie, how hard is this tour thing? Like, who am I waiting to come and tell? So I was like, what do people need? We need a crew. We need equipment, we need accommodation, we need food, and we need to be able to move around. And I was clear that I wanted to do it in a car, like, we're on the road. And so I wrote it out in an Excel sheet, and I was like, okay, this doesn't seem like rocket science. All right. And I applied for the fund, and I got it. And we did Nairobi, we did Mombasa, we did Nakuru, we did Kisumu. And we did this.
That's in a span of how long?
Oh my God, we had maybe 2 weeks.
2 weeks, you're done? Nairobi, Mombasa?
Kisumu, and Nakuru.
Wow.
And what we did is we did a call out. We said, okay, we're coming to, and we'd set up everything. So I was like, man, now the hard bit is, me, I know I want to do this tour, but what if people in those places don't share their stories?
Yeah.
Then now, what am I touring? And so
Tembea Kenya.
we put, right? So the short changes. So we put a call out, and 200 people from those different regions in 2 days had signed up. So we had to bring it down because it was during COVID lockdown. So we only had a very limited time to be able to record stories. And we were recording stories and also recording historical things about the cities. And so we did it, we put it out, it was great. When we got back, I was talking to the French embassy in Kenya, and I was working with them on something different. And I was going for the New Africa and France summit. And then I was like, but also, you know, I do this thing. You have to be a business. Every room you walk in to sell all your businesses, right? And then we ended up going to Paris, which was great, to record Africans who live there. And that, what I love about that, it was co-funded by the business. So it's not that somebody else did it for us, and I was just like, if we can do this, we can do anything. Like we can literally do anything. And it was great to record a lovely lady. She's Moroccan, living in Paris, speaking to issues around racism, but also opportunity. A young lady a Kenyan lady who lives in Paris as well, who went to school and just decided, I'm not going back. And I was like, this is interesting. And then as soon as we came back from Paris, because at the New Africa and France summit, which was really about calling out the colonizers.
He'll get to that. He wants to interrogate that. Continue. Let's continue.
Questions around that.
Yeah.
Keep going.
And so I had a bit of a viral moment that I didn't know about until the next morning when we turned on the telly.
You broke the internet.
We turned on the telly and they're like, hey, I think you're on the news. And it's just wee. I'm like, what are they saying? Are they saying good things? I'm like, what is this? Anyway, so when we came back, then I got the Zimbabwe National Gallery reached out to me, and they were like, hey, we saw you speak and we want you to come, and we're talking about the British bringing back our objects. And I was like, ooh, okay, that's interesting. This is not something I studied for, but I'm African, so it's valid for me to be in this conversation. And then I was like, and I also have a platform.
Yes.
That I think could speak to us this. It was great.
Yeah.
So we go to Zimbabwe, and that's when I knew I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing, and it's very important. Zimbabwe has received bad PR. And the saddest bit is, as Africans, we swallowed that PR and we believed it 100%, and we looked down on Zimbabwe. That is the truth. And when we went there, do they have political issues? Yes, but which country doesn't? Because even the States, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Do they have economic issues? Excuse me, we are all in this thing, you know? But we really looked down on them. And then when I arrived, I have so much respect for the Zimbabweans. They have found a way for their traditional beliefs and customs to sit side by side with the modern world. So in the conference, we started, whereas Kenyans, we start off by, maybe there'll be an anthem, maybe there might be a prayer. There, we honored our ancestors. And they were all sorts of CEOs and whatever, and diplomats, and man, they had to sit down as we honored our ancestors, and then we're like, yep, now we can start, which I thought was so beautiful. And
how are they honoring the ancestors?
They have a ritual.
Like
so there were bakulis, and there was like a mixture, and there's the person leading it said something, and you clap to receive the blessings from the ancestors. There was a guy called Matosi, who I just have so much respect for, and he's so revered. And when he walked in, everybody was like, oh my God, and he sat on the floor. But it's because he's such a champion for their traditional beliefs and customs and cultures. And I cried. Okay, I know I said I cry a lot, but I cried. I didn't want to come back home. Sorry, Kenyans. I didn't want to come back home. I was just like, I think I found my home and I did the Kenyan thing of like, how does one buy land here? I was like, and then, is it hard?
50 by 100.
I was ready, and I'm so ready to move, but like, and I knew, I was like, on our platform now, we can tell Zimbabwe's story with honor and with dignity, and in a way that shows that it's not just made of one thing. Just as Kenya, Kenya's not made up of its problems only. There's a lot where,
but the only issue with Kenya is which I find interesting, because you're in Joburg, South Africa, with all the issues they have.
Yeah.
They have an identity, a certain identity, and this plays out in their music, in their films, and so on and so forth. You go to Zimbabwe, same thing. I was in Zambia. That's the same feeling I had meeting all those people in Zambia. But in Kenya, it's sort of, we don't have an identity of our own. Like if somebody came from outside, comes to Kenya, especially come to Nairobi, it's so modern, everything's so modern. So you don't find one identity as a country when you think of Kenya. But like you're saying, in Zimbabwe, you're in this conference and you realize, wow, this I need to be in this place.
I really actually have a lot of grace for Kenyans, because I think first we can have multiple identities in terms of our communities. I think that's beautiful. But intentionally, our identity was stripped, and the history we learned wasn't our history. So how can you be what you don't know? You know what I mean? And it's now that we're trying to parts of our country is trying to reconstruct it and be like, okay, so Ati, what happened? For example, that documentary, A Very British Way of Torture. And I watched it during Jamhuri Day, and I was like, every Jamhuri Day, I'm going to watch a documentary about us, you know? And you're hearing what we were in school learning about Hitler and his concentration camps just down the road in Athi River, you know? And so it's like we intentionally, how do you strip down someone to be able to conquer them? Even in abusive relationships. You strip at their identity, right? So they're dependent on you. And I think that's what happened to us. Our fault is two things. One, we have not tried to change that intentionally. Two, we have Kenyans who have taken advantage of that. So our leaders, etc., who have taken advantage of the vacuum and the lack of identity to their own good. And so I have grace for us in that sense. I think we're trying to find ourselves. I think the generation after us are amazing. They're just like being who they are.
And do you feel this current generation, not our generation, but like you're saying, the current one, the next one, are they trying to find their own identity? Because I remember, I don't know whether Mark, you know this story, we had that conversation another time in the newsroom where somebody had gone out to do Vox Pops. And they were asking questions. Do you know who Wangari Maathai is?
Wangari
You remember that story? And,
that's short for trees.
That's short for trees. Is that short for trees? Like they're trying to, like, you don't even know who Wangari Maathai is? Like,
but he knew, it's just how he said it.
Lingo. And she also short for trees, though.
Made it trendy.
She really was.
But you have a lot of people to celebrate. But last week we were talking to Cara Dul, and she was saying Catherine Dereba, for example, she's not celebrated
in London,
here.
she wouldn't walk.
In London, she can't walk on the streets in London.
Exactly.
But in Kenya, she will walk up Amoy Avenue. Now,
and
chances are nobody will even stop her, because we don't know the people who have represented us, not necessarily in terms of culture, but even through sports, celebrating these people, appreciating these people. I mean, during Jamhuri Day, when we see those old men with Nini being celebrated, do we even know Mekatilili? Do we even know?
Oh my God, I have to call out Malindi. I went to the Mekatilili statue, and it's covered up and like just not taken care of. And they cover it because the kids threw things inside. And I'm just like, well, have you told them the story? Like, have you told them who this great person, this statue honors? The museum is run down, super run down. I was really not happy about it. But it's we don't tell our own stories to each other and to ourselves, right? And so how can you be proud of what you don't know? You know, where do you learn that? How can we learn at our big age? It takes us being intentional as Kenyans, even on a personal level, and saying, I watched the episode with Carl Radul and saying, I'm going to watch this local Kenyan football team. Or I am going to watch this volleyball team. I am going to change my personal routine and intentionally do ABCD that relates to my identity as a Kenyan. We're waiting for somebody else to do it. We're waiting for Boniface Mwangi. We're always waiting for someone else to do it. We're like, this is the problem. And then we sit back, and then it's like, and then even in your house, you can start changing these things. It's true. You know,
and
I think,
and there's something she's doing in her house and where she's living. We won't drop the pin, but we want to talk about that because I want to get in your space of peace. But in intentionality, they know we need to talk about this. She told, and I want to know how, when you spoke to at the New Africa France Summit in Montpellier, I think that's what it's called in Paris. Was this in 2021 or
2021?
Yes.
Yes.
What were you thinking?
Imagine I wasn't thinking, like, see, we're all saying the same things.
Yeah, no, but like you
as Kenyans on Twitter, we're always like...
She told...
Like the president
Macron
is next to you.
Yes.
Like looking at you, and you're looking at him. But
and smiling.
You're so smart in how you deliver that speech. But the first thing that came to my mind is, did you write it?
Yeah.
Yes. So what was so awesome, it was such a magical experience. And I think what I respect French activists.
Yes.
Or activists in France. Because there's a way they think about how to tackle change that I hadn't done for myself. So when I arrived, they said, oh, you're going to be on this panel. And it was just like, one of my friends, Cyril, at the French embassy, he was like, oh, yeah, the president might be there. I was just like, might be. But I was like, okay, whatever, we'll see. And then they're like, oh, no, now you're in the final panel that's wrapping the summit, and it's with the president. I'm like, okay. And we were about, I want to say maybe 11 or 12.
Yeah.
I was the only English-speaking person on the panel, which was great for me to be a minority in that regard and to experience that and to understand how we as English-speaking Africa kind of don't interact with Francophone African countries. And so, and understanding that history and understanding there were people on the panel who were getting threats from home. Like, don't say ABCD or else, like, you know, the military will be waiting for you in when you land. And I was just like, no, I don't think my country cares. So I can say anything, guys. I think I'm good. And of course, I think like a few months before, Uhuru had gone to France and he'd had a close
that picture, they kind of had a hug.
Yeah.
It was really
so
close.
I was like, I think I'm good. I'm not sure. Because I don't know what deals were being struck.
Yeah, you might
I
just
think
spoil
I'm
it.
good, you know? And, you know, going through the history. And we'd spent 5 days. My first week in France, I did not sightsee anything, right? We were indoors morning to evening, workshopping, colonization. What were the effects? Even on a personal level, how are you feeling?
Yeah.
You know, and it would bring up so many emotions. And at the end of it, we'd have like a kumbaya moment and just like resettle, like, how are you feeling? Are you feeling okay? Like, because you're going through what your ancestors experienced, such brutality. You're just like, why would you do that to another human being, you know? And then you're conflicted because now you're in this country and it's like, what? This is so much, like so much happening. So on the day, first and foremost, that was not how me I was told. The setup was going to be, this dude was meant to be seated down.
Like
not on the stage. So I remember
this dude, the president.
Just be down there. You know, at this distance, you can't like kick me. So before you know, our panel, I was seated next to him. And I was just like, if this man knows me, I'm just here smiling. And if he knows the things I'm about to say, he'll just be like, where? So when the MC called him up, I was shaking my head because I'm trying to be like, no. he's going to be down here. So when we're up talking like it's, but anyway, he was on there. And I just felt like I hadn't done anything spectacular. I had just spoken the truth. It's the truth we speak, even as a country that was colonized by the British. We say it all the time about the British. So I was like, but see, we decided this summit is for openness. That's why you didn't invite us as president. So then, okay.
So you had a session of Funguaroho.
Funguaroho. And it was quite, it's only afterwards, when I came off the stage, and obviously there were the Kenyans in the crowds, and that was nice because I was a bit nervous. But like when I came off, there were very many Africans who were saying thank you.
Wow.
Some who were telling me thank you in French and whatever. And I was like, okay, but I hadn't taken it in. And then we went out as the Kenyans that evening to celebrate the end.
My question is this. So you're giving this speech. You hadn't like, no one told you these are the rules. So don't say these
There were
because the
no
president
rules.
is there. Don't do this.
In fact, we kicked out the president's advisor came to, while we were getting ready for the panel, came in and to one of our sessions. And I really respect, his name has left me, but he was from Senegal.
Yeah.
And he was very vocal and he said, we wouldn't continue talking until you leave.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And so he was kicked out.
So as you're giving a
we were
speech,
allowed to say anything.
So you're giving a speech, the president is sitting next to you. What was going through your mind as, you're just digging, you're looking at him, you're digging.
Smiling.
Yeah, I had
what was the vibe? What was the vibe you're feeling from him?
Daggers. And then there was the gender minister who I'd sat next to on the train ride to Montpellier, and we talked so like well, and I was just like, I hope she's not like, excuse me,
Yeah.
what's going
What
on?
did you do?
She's really cool. There's respect for truth
Yeah.
in that space that I think here I would have been arrested or something would have happened to me. But I felt like it's the truth. I'm saying the truth. Like, how can you be offended by the truth? And if you're offended by the truth, then you really need soul search because why?
You
What's
weren't
the
scared.
reason? I don't think I was scared because in my head, I was saying things that we're all saying. It's only the next day when I was like, why am I on the news? And like, what's going on? And it was like the